If any of you out there were rocking during the 80s, you probably remember the Kramer brand. This Kramer Baretta was made super popular by one Eddie Van Halen. He was using the Kramer Baretta that wasn't the special and had the Floyd Rose made in the USA, but this guitar is very similar with a couple of big differences. A, it won't cost you an arm and a leg. B, it doesn't have a Floyd. But C, it also has all of the other main features that the original had without the heavy price point, and it still sounds great. So today we're going to be looking at this guitar in more detail and going over it head to toe for those of you interested in checking it out. So if you were around in the 80s and were rocking with some big hair metal band, you'll probably remember Kramer. Kramer is a brand that was very, very popular back in the 80s and made extremely popular by one Edward Van Halen. Of course, everyone knows who Eddie Van Halen is. He's the front man for Van Halen, and he is a virtuoso that came on the scene with one of these way back in the day that was striped in red, white, and black. Now, that guitar became iconic because that was Eddie's guitar. Now, the Kramer brand since then has kind of died down, has kind of been pushed aside by Gibson. Kramer was bought by Gibson, and until recently, they haven't really done anything with the brand. Just recently, however, Gibson announced that they would be re-releasing the Kramer Barettas. Now, that is not the same guitar as this. The guitars that they're going to be re-releasing are going to be complete with the Floyd Rose and everything, like the originals and made in the US. This guitar, however, is a simplified version of that, and it doesn't have the Floyd Rose, and it is not made in the US. It's actually made in Indonesia. Now, that being said, we're going to go over the details on this guitar head to toe, so I'm really going to be able to tell you exactly what you're getting for your money. But I can start this video by saying that this guitar is super affordable. I picked it up used, and I can honestly say that I paid this guitar for what you would normally pay one good quality pickup. And I'm getting a complete guitar that has a lot of great features and sounds darn fantastic. So I'm a big fan of Eddie Van Halen. I always was. I was back in high school when they hit the scene, and he blew my mind, and I couldn't help but become a Van Halen fan because he was just so great on guitar. And ever since then, I've always wanted to have a guitar like his. Now, the trouble is they did come out with guitars that looked like his guitar. Now, Charvel came out with a series of striped guitars like the ones that he was using. So he had the one that was red, black, and white. They also came with the other one that was black and yellow. And I didn't want to buy those guitars because I didn't want it to be striped. I like Eddie Van Halen and I like this guitar, and I didn't want to have the stripes because there's a lot of weight behind those stripes. And if you show up at a gig with a guitar that's striped and it looks like Eddie Van Halen's guitar, you better darn well have Eddie's chops down to a T, because otherwise they're going to laugh you right out of that rehearsal studio if you can't play those chops. Now, this guitar is black and very subdued, and although it is the same model, it doesn't say or scream Eddie Van Halen as much as the Charvels did. So I'm a lot more at ease bringing this to a gig as opposed to the other one. Now, the cool thing about this guitar is that it has a minimalistic approach that Eddie Van Halen was very, very famous for. He didn't have anything on his guitar that he didn't use. So really, it's a one pickup configuration, and the pickup is slanted. That is something that Eddie Van Halen himself, invented or popularized. He basically took the idea from Fender and he said, well, if Fender put the bridge pickup at a slant like that, maybe I should put the humbucker pickup at a slant like that and see what happens. And it kind of stuck, and he did that with most of his guitars. And because he did that, I guess everybody figured it must work, it must be good because he's using it that way. So this guitar comes with one bridge pickup as a standard features, right? That pickup is actually a ceramic pickup and is not this pickup that is in this guitar. I'll give you a little bit of a closer look so you'll see what I mean here. So this guitar came with the pickup already swapped out. The previous owner did that before I got to it. So that means that this pickup is now a Seymour Duncan 59, which is a really cool pickup to have in a guitar, and it works extremely well in this guitar. I don't know if it's because of the mahogany body or what, but it really does sing in this guitar. I am not a huge fan of the 59, but in this guitar it really works well. So with one pickup, one volume knob, and nothing else, not even a switch, there's not much to go wrong. And having the guitar configuration so that there's not a whole lot in the circuit actually makes it sound really good. The sound is pure and it's not altered in any way. And everyone knows the more you have in the circuit, the less the sound remains pure, and you do lose high end. There is a difference when you have tone knobs and switches and whatnot in the circuit. So this is, less cluttered, more direct sound, and it works very, very well. What I like about this guitar also is the fact that it uses a Strat style body. Now, because the body is Strat style, it does have the armrest and tummy tuck in the back. And what I particularly like about this guitar is that the curves on the body, the routing, is really nice and rounded. I often see knockoff Fender bodies that remain a little bit more angular for some reason. Maybe it's less hassle when they have to route it out. I don't know, but they look cheaper to me. But this guitar is routed really nicely and it's got some nice curves. You can even see here the way the corners are rounded out there, and it really feels comfortable. So there's nothing to complain about. They even went to the trouble of putting the output jack inset. So this is something that you would see kind of like maybe more like a Telecaster, but you would normally have a little plate there with some screws, but this is a much cleaner approach. Now, the guitar body being black, obviously you're going to have fingerprints, you're going to see your scratches, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend black for everyone, but I like the stealth approach, and with the rosewood neck, it really does look nice. It also has the matching headstock, and that is something that looks really nice on this guitar. So it's almost like a stealth version, something that you would see almost on like what you can find on the Wolfgang stealth models, but it works really nicely on this guitar. Now, the only thing that people might complain about is the fact that the bridge is not a Floyd. And for those of you who love Floyds, I get it. You can do a lot with a Floyd Rose. And some people love them, some people hate them. I've owned Floyd Rose guitars before in the past, and for me, they're fun, but they are a pain in the ass to maintain and keep working properly. I actually lately prefer to go with something a little bit more simple, like the 6-saddle bridge that you would find on this guitar or on Strats. Now, that being said, the bridge on this guitar is not the highest quality bridge. It does the job and it works fine, and it keeps things in tune, and it you're able to intonate properly, and there's no issues there. But eventually, if you're really picky and you do want to add to the guitar, you might consider changing out the bridge for something a little bit more high quality. It's not a necessity and it doesn't have to be done, but some people might consider that as an option. What I did was I changed the knob on this guitar right away. It came with a knob that looked like a Fender volume knob, and it was white, and it didn't fit with the guitar. I didn't like the white because everything else is black. So I swapped out the knob right away, and I put this MXR knob on it. Why? Because, well, Eddie Van Halen had a knob like that on his guitar, and it's a lot easier to move around with one finger. And the little stripe actually glows in the dark, which I think is pretty cool. Other than that, the neck on the guitar is wonderful. It is a 22 fret neck. It has inlays that are plastic. They're not mother of pearl, but that's fine for the amount of money that you're paying this guitar. The rosewood neck, though, is actual rosewood and is not the laurel that a lot of other companies are using these days instead of rosewood, because they can't ship rosewood everywhere. So they're swapping it out, and it looks similar, but it looks a little bit more dried out and less rich, in my opinion. This neck, on the other hand, looks really, really nice and rich, nice and dark. I haven't even oiled it yet, and it still looks really nice. The pickups on this guitar, since it's a mahogany body, you do have a richer sound, and I find that matching that with a rosewood neck really makes a nice combination. The frets on the guitar are jumbo frets, and they are a little bit on the flat side, which actually make it really nice to play. It's not a struggle at all. It's a 12-inch radiused neck, and it is really easy to play. It sustains wonderfully, and I haven't even changed the strings on the guitar since I got it, because it plays really nicely. Now, I'll wait to do that. Now, the back of the neck is where things get interesting. Now, it is a satin finish on the neck, and I like it because it isn't really sticky or anything like that. The neck is a C shape, but it's a flatter C shape. It's not as flat as an Ibanez guitar is. It is actually a little bit fatter than that. I would say it's very similar, actually even a little bit more rounded than what I had on my San Dimas. I would say it's closer to what you're going to get on a Wolfgang. I had a Wolfgang stealth guitar that had a neck very similar to this one. The only thing I can tell you is that it is a little bit wider, and it fits a lot nicer into my hand than the Wolfgang Stealth did. That's why I actually ended up selling the Wolfgang Stealth, because it was a great guitar, but the neck was a little bit too narrow for my hands. So it is a nice fast neck, but it doesn't feel awkward in any way. Now, the headstock, it is painted black to match the body, which is really cool. You do have the truss rod cover that does say Baretta Special on it. And the tuners on it are just standard tuners. They're not locking or anything like that. Now, one thing I have to say about the banana headstock is that it is definitely a throwback to the 80s. So if you're not a fan of the hockey stick type headstock, you might not like it, but I like it just because Eddie had it and it feels really nice. I did notice that the thickness of the wood here, you know, the actual front to back is really nice and thick. It doesn't feel cheap in your hands or anything like that. They put in a nice chunk of wood there. And the back of it even has a little emblem here that says 40 years Kramer, 1976 to 2016, proudly designed in the USA. So the guitar has been designed in the USA, but is actually being built in Indonesia. You'll see here there's also a little joint where they join the two pieces of wood, and that's normal because otherwise you would have to have a heck of a wide piece of wood to be able to make the neck out of, you know. So without being locking tuners or anything like that, they still work well. One of the issues that you're always going to have with this kind of configuration is the spread on the strings. Because they spread out, sometimes what ends up happening is when you're using a whammy bar and it doesn't have a locking nut, then the strings might not always return to pitch because they will snag. This is the same type of issue that you'll see on a Gibson Les Paul, for example. But I find that if you lubricate the neck, the nuts here at the neck, you'll avoid that situation. And if it does seem to be a problem for you, what you need to do is you need to probably cut yourself another nut that has the right angles to accommodate the spread on the strings, and that problem will go away. The other hardware on this guitar, and there's not a whole lot of hardware to talk about, is the locking, well, not locking, the little strap locks here. They're nice and good quality metal, nice and big, so they won't slip out. The neck pocket, the neck joint looks very nicely done. It's very tightly done. There's no gaps. There's nothing back here to show any kind of poor craftsmanship. The back panel, the back of this guitar basically is pretty simple. You have the access to the springs and the bridge, and then the electronics. I haven't even opened this yet. As you can see, there's still plastic on there. It really was a mint guitar. I like the fact that they did inset the jack to make it look a little bit more quality. So overall, this guitar seems like a really nice rock machine with the mahogany body. I was actually surprised that they decided to use mahogany on this guitar, because typically they try to cut corners and use something like poplar or basswood, something that's a little less expensive. So mahogany tends to be a little bit warmer sounding and also probably a little bit more expensive. And I was expecting the guitar to be even a little bit heavier than it is, but it's actually not heavy at all. It's substantially light, and because the body is painted over in a solid color, they probably use a different species of mahogany. Although it is still mahogany, technically it doesn't have to be a high grade mahogany. So I guess that will keep the price of the guitar down. But overall, I've been playing this guitar now for a couple of days, and it sustains wonderfully, and it really plays really nicely. I find myself playing a lot of like chunky rhythms. Of course, you know, some Van Halen tunes and whatnot, just because it sounds really good. So you're playing, you know, Honeymoon Suite, Van Halen, maybe White Snake, and some other, you know, 80s music. Some riffs from, Motley Crue or something like that. It just lends itself well to that style of palm muted and a little bit higher gain playing. And the combination of the Seymour Duncan 59 with the body is really a match made in heaven on this guitar. And I'm not a big fan of the Duncan 59 usually, but it really does work in this guitar. So I want to play it for you guys so you can get an idea of some of the tones that you can get out of it, because I've listened to a lot of YouTube videos that were made on this guitar, and honestly, I was super surprised at how different it actually sounds compared to some of those videos. So I want to give you the opportunity to hear it in action. So after hearing the guitar in action, guys, what do you think? Do you think it's a keeper? I think it's a super bargain. And if I had an opportunity to find another used one like this, I would snag it up in a heartbeat, because I think it's super value. And if, again, for the amount of money I paid for it, it was a no-brainer. I think I'm going to enjoy playing this guitar for a long time. So if you have any comments on this guitar, specifically maybe if you own one or you're thinking of getting one, leave me your comments below. I'll try to answer them. Sometimes it takes me a little bit of time to answer, and some other viewers will answer your questions before I get to them, which is perfectly fine as long as the answers are right. I don't mind people chipping in and helping out and you know, exchanging information like that. That's perfectly fine. That's what this channel is all about. But leave your comments below. I will get to them. If you haven't already hit the little bell icon, please make sure you do that so you'll be notified whenever I post another great guitar review. And guys, keep coming back, because I really do appreciate you guys tuning in. That's why I do this. I do it for you, all the gearheads and addicted guitarists and musicians out there. This channel is specifically for you. So please keep rocking and stay tuned. There'll be more great videos like this one coming your way.